Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm Wang Zongli, Vera. Today is my turn to do my presentation, and today my topic is about peer feedback and author response on Chinese university students' English writing performance. And in our previous tutorials, we have talked a lot about peer feedback, but I think author response is also worth our attention. This article is selected from Reading Research Quarterly, and authors of this article are Zhang Xin and John. Okay, so let's begin. Enhancing writing pedagogy in university-based courses for students of English as a foreign language has been a long-term goal of educators and researchers. Most recent work, however, has relied on qualitative methodologies that limit our capacity to generalize findings. And in this quantitative study, the authors adopted a quasi-experimental control group design to investigate effects of peer feedback and author response on university students' writing performance in a context of English as a foreign language. So it's a fully quantitative design. And the research has this article has been divided into 7 different parts. They are literature review, research questions, and design of the present study, data analysis, results, discussion, limitations, and conclusions. So firstly, let's take a look. Let's take a look at the literature review. Firstly, there is a very important definition. It's formative feedback. Formative feedback has been widely acknowledged as a valuable component in teaching and learning to write. But there are many limitations. Traditional practices may make formative teacher feedback difficult. For example, Ferris, Brown, Liu, and Stein, they have raised that time was a significant issue that constrained all of their writing teachers' response practices. That means, when working with large numbers of students, teachers may limit their feedback to holistic, summative assessment to keep up with grading expectations. And secondly, the literature suggests that when students are provided feedback, it tends to focus on mechanics rather than content. Uh, this was raised by Ferris, Horowitz, and Wilbur, these scholars. And thirdly, another important issue highlighted by Lee is that teacher feedback often relies on one-way messages from the teacher to the student, which tends to push students into a passive role. Lastly, the existing literature overwhelmingly focuses on peer feedback without analyzing how authors assess and use that feedback. So in this study, the author explored an instructional approach based on both peer feedback and author responses to that feedback, with the aim of promoting more authentic communication, deeper critical thinking, and self-regulating learning. After the literature review, let's take a look at the theories in this article. The The instructional approach developed and tested in this study draws on theoretical constructs from three theories of learning and two specialized second language acquisition frameworks. The three theories are social constructivism, self-regulated learning theory, and writing process theory serve as our more general framework, emphasizing the critical roles of a social interaction and the subsequent learner internalization. And the two second language acquisition frameworks including input and output hypothesis. Before this article, there are many researchers have done many different researches regarding this topic. So let's take a look at this. What have we learned from second language studies of peer feedback? Although studies on writing instruction have suggested that students may sometimes prefer teacher feedback over peer feedback, other studies have highlighted problems with teacher feedback. The first one is that teacher feedback revisions often focus on surface features and mechanics, uh, or we can say the structures. Secondly, peer feedback may be equally effective while simultaneously addressing the persistent problem of teacher overloaded. And from many studies, we knew that Chinese educators and institutions are ready to replace or supplement traditional teacher-centered practices with more student-centered approaches that include peer feedback. So now it's very important for us to do more research regarding this. But here's one important thing. How we define and evaluate peer review. Although previous work has supported a positive relation between peer feedback and subsequent writing performance, it is essential to identify qualities that distinguish more and less useful types of feedback. Li Liu and Steckberg investigated the influence of peer feedback on the quality of web-based writing projects. And Peter Dolce, these scholars applied a scoring rubric to evaluate secondary students' written feedback in an first language writing task. And Kim in 2005 designed two rubrics for peer feedback and back feedback, which we refer to as author response. So, in short, prior work has supported both the position that peer review can be structured in a way to support systematic measures and the claim that learners can be taught to generate high-quality peer reviews. Although success seems to depend on clearly defining and structuring the peer review process. Then let's take a look at how the authors design uh, the research. Firstly, it's about research questions and design of the present study. There are two research questions in this article. The first one is, what are the comparative effects of peer feedback and traditional feedback on Chinese university students' English writing performance? Second one is, how does the quality of students' feedback and author response influence writing performance? In this study, the authors employed a quasi-experimental, non-equivalent control group design. In this article, eight intact classes were recruited and randomly assigned to the control and experimental groups, with four groups with four classes in each group. The control group participated in a traditional instructional format which relied exclusively on teacher feedback, and the experimental group, in contrast, was trained to generate and use peer feedback. The study lasted 15 weeks. In week 1, the course syllabus and objectives were introduced and discussed. In week 2, In weeks 2 and 15, pre and post tests, respectively, were administered, and in week 13, feedback was collected from the peer feedback and the group only. And in week 14, author responses were collected from the peer feedback group only. Oh, I'm sorry. Then it's the materials they have used in this article, in this research. The study relied on three distinct types of materials: feedback and author response forms to structure student work, scoring forms to evaluate the quality of the feedback, and author responses, and pre and post test assessments to gauge the quality of participants writing. And then it's about the data analysis. In the analysis, the authors included a mixed repeated measures analysis of covariance, relying on English proficiency as a covariate and testing for differences between groups using pre and post test writing assessments to address research question 1. And in addressing research question 2, the authors planned a series of multiple regression analysis. And about the participants in this article, a total of 198 students were recruited, providing good statistical power. Then we come to the next part. It's the results of this article. The first research question, like we mentioned before, it's examined whether there was a statistically significant difference in writing gains based on feedback, I mean teachers versus peer, when controlling for general English proficiency. In this article, if you have read it, we can see many figures. And from these figures, we can see that writing performance scores for the peer feedback group showed statistically significant gains over those seen in students receiving only traditional teacher feedback. And to better understand this difference in writing performance over time, adjusted means are plotted in figure 1. We can see from this figure. Each line shows the pre and post test scores, with the peer feedback group's scores shown by the solid line and the traditional feedback group's scores displayed as a dashed line. We can see from the figure it's obviously that the the students learning with peer feedback methods writing performance is much better than the students learning with traditional feedback. Then it's about the second research question: how do feedback and author response influence writing? The author answered this question from different dimensions. There are general impact of feedback, author response, and the initial writing ability. And how does the successive predictor power of independent variables change in a three-step hierarchical regression that enters the feedback variable first? And how does the successive predictive power of independent variables change in a three-step hierarchical regression that enters the author response variable first? Then the author did a summary of results of this quantitative analysis. In the summary, results of the ANCOVA reveal that, beginning with a slightly different level of writing ability, the peer feedback group made greater growth in writing achievement than the traditional feedback group did. Secondly, the advantage of the instructional intervention can reasonably be attributed to the specific author response and peer feedback. And thirdly, the quality of author response appears to have a slightly stronger predictive capacity than feedback. Although quantitative analysis provided good evidence for the reliability of the measures and the effectiveness of the intervention, but the authors felt it was important to consider responses of individual participants so they can better understand how they understand and use their learning to address writing and revising. So the author think that although author-reviewer interactions included both oral first language discussion and written second language responses, oral interactions were not recorded. So uh, the focus is on written peer review comments and corresponding author responses. So we can see an example of these reviews here. In the example in Table 5, the peer reviewers notes that the author's topic sentences don't seem to support the position taken in the essay. And the second interaction is related to uh, topic sentences but focuses on examples intended to support these sentences. And the third example in Table 5, we can see focuses on the clarity of the author's conclusion and, in our view, highlights a less effective interaction. And in the final example, the reviewer's comments begin on a positive note, commending use of vocabulary and organization. Then we come to the discussion part of this article. One distinctive aspect of this study is its reliance on a quantitative analysis to assess the influence of peer feedback on Chinese EFL students' writing achievement. The repeated measures A and CLVA showed that the peer feedback group outperformed the traditional feedback group. And secondly, the training was designed to help students identify problems in their peers' essays, but it seems likely that they were also learning to view their own writing with a more critical eye, as evidenced by the reviewer-author interactions in Table 5. And lastly, another distinctive aspect of the work reported here is that whereas nearly all recent peer feedback studies examined the relation between peer feedback and writing, this study also considered how author response is related to writing performance. The hierarchical multiple regressions indicated that the quality of author responses was strongly related to writing achievement. And then we come to the next part is about the limitations of this article. The first limitation is the deliberate focus on writing instruction in post-secondary EFL classrooms. So other populations of students may respond differently to this intervention. And the second one is that we noted in this discussion of findings is that quasi-experimental designs often limit generalizability by relying on intact classes of students, reducing power as a result of data clustering. And then it's about the teacher effects. In an effort to maximize the fidelity of implementation of the peer feedback intervention, sections in this condition were taught by the same instructors. So the researcher who developed the intervention as a result, the analysis responding to research question 1 didn't control for this kind of effect. Uh, Finally, we can note that uh, the writing assessment was a brief sampling collected in a 45-minute session, so it is not clear whether the findings will apply in longer writing tasks. So it's about writing assessment limitation. Then let's take a look at the conclusions of this article.